Okay, call the November meeting of the District's Public Library District Board to order. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. Welcome to anyone who's watching online. Our first order of business is our consent agenda, which consists of our meeting minutes from our October 9th meeting and district disbursements. And have people had a chance to review both of those? Any additions or corrections?
I have a question on the disbursements.
Okay.
And maybe I'm just noticing it when we get all of it compiled together, but for example, on the payments to Baker and Taylor, they're, I mean, it's all the same date, but they're all individual checks.
Yeah, I can talk to that.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, it is a curiosity. So, when we receive invoices from Baker and Taylor, we receive a fleet of them for a variety of different materials, and they all kind of, or basically we're paying them weekly. So we get a dozen, 2 dozen each week that we cut. Now, when we were doing only paper checks, we would consolidate that into a single check, and you would see on the check stub 10 line items with the dollar amounts.
Okay,
But now that we're paying them via ACH, each of those invoices gets its own ACH transaction.
okay.
And that's really what you're seeing there. And it looks like 2 pages worth of books, and that is what it is. It's just each of those corresponds to one invoice.
Okay.
It goes to Baker and Taylor.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it's a little bit different system, and thank you, for setting up the email secure signing site, because that worked really well this time, and
Yes, has everyone had a chance to log in? And if not, I can follow up with IT. Yeah?
yeah,
Okay, great. Fantastic.
and thanks for the forwarding instructions, so I didn't have to go and research that myself, so, and that works great too. So, that's a good improvement. So, I would entertain a motion if no one has additions or corrections.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, now, we have a public comment section. Are there any members of the public online that would like to comment?
No, does not appear so. Matt Alvarez and Connell are on.
Okay. Any members of the public that would like to make a comment?
Nothing in chat.
Okay. Hearing none. We'll go on to our first item of business, which is the education piece. It's always one of the best reports of the year. So volunteer services by Judy.
Are you all good with me standing right here?
Yes, don't trip on the court.
No, I've already found one. So it was a pleasure to be here, so thank you for inviting me. And also to have the opportunity to share what's happening with volunteer services, which is always active and always busy and always has lots to report. I believe Todd gave you at some point a copy of our annual report. If not, I have copies if you want them. And I want to go over some of it. I'm happy to report that things are going well, which is always nice. We are an organization that has dedicated, engaged volunteers. It's just makes my heart sing. And here's for this happening for many years to come.
Before you go any further, I should say that recently Judy lost her job because we promoted her to volunteer services supervisor. So congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's a wonderful opportunity, and we'll talk more about what's happening going forward. Thank you. So to start, so we have, I believe it's 6 libraries, correct? Let me correct me if I'm wrong. 5 of the 6 are back online with volunteers. And we're in the home stretch with Redmond, as we all know. So it's sort of the last I wrote the last library to come out of remodel or out of the ground, so to speak, but we'll talk more about, Redmond in a bit, or I will. And I always wanna say, when I start talking about statistics, which I will, to remember it's not all about the numbers. It's about meeting the need, and, you know, it's, the total numbers are important, but it's really the stories, and what's happening with the library or the organization that we're working with. And the numbers are icing on the cake. The numbers are good, that's always nice. But also this is 5 of 6 libraries, and our 6th library, Redmond, that's gonna come out, will be a very large
Sorry,
library.
I
Oh, no,
just
you're
realized I'm not sharing to anybody watching.
Oh.
Keep
I'll
going.
share it. And some of this last fiscal year, not all libraries were back on board. So with that in mind, the numbers are great, but they're shifted a little bit because we don't have all the libraries online for this fiscal year, and one is missing completely. Let's just sort of move along here. This is all part of the annual report, which you've seen. This is sort of our number. 166 volunteers providing services over the last fiscal year, the number of service hours, and the wonderful taxpayer money that's saved by their support. Our youngest volunteers, this last fiscal year were 12, that is our minimum age. And our oldest volunteer has now turned 93, since the end of the fiscal year. And he was here today. He's an amazing gentleman. Longest serving volunteer is 23 years, which is pretty impressive. Most of our volunteers on the average, maybe 3 to 5 years, still pretty awesome. 23 years sort of rocks it. It's not working. We'll see what happens next. Oops, go back one. Thank you. This is part of the annual report. You'll see, it's a wide variety of folks from young. We have 12-year-old, the gentleman, the young man Joshua on the left-hand bottom is 12, and then I don't have one for Dwayne, who is our oldest volunteer, but it's just a really lovely smattering of folks and why they come. Joshua came through doing some schoolwork, stayed through the summer, and then decided he wanted to do something else, but wants to return next summer. It's pretty sweet. Sophie is a downtown Bend volunteer. She goes to RPA, lives in Bend, Redmond, essentially. And as we're talking about Redmond and going forward, since she's based there most of her day, except for Wednesday, maybe Monday when she volunteers here. I said, I'm assuming you're gonna wanna be there because you're there most of your day, and she said, I wanna do both. That was pretty sweet. And I didn't pick these photos for this reason, but then right next to Sophie, who's the upper left, is Rick, who is a volunteer in Redmond. And we had 4 or 5 volunteers when we went down into temp space in Redmond who wanted to continue and come to Bend. So we have 2 in East Bend who are currently volunteering, and 3 in downtown Bend who are from Redmond. And so far, 2 out of the 5, let's say, are gonna do both sites when Redmond opens, which really bestills my heart. It speaks to how invested they are in doing what they do with us. So it's a fun thing to look at. See if overall, these are the things our volunteers do. As you can imagine, shelving is the largest piece of what our volunteers do to support the library district. But all of these are tasks that they are currently doing. I'm chomping at the bit to talk about Redmond, but I gotta go for a minute more. Volunteer services, this is sort of who we are and who was helping during the last fiscal year. Our volunteer services team includes myself and these point people in our libraries. So all our libraries have a point person or 2 in their buildings. Downtown Bend has 2, Redmond will have 2 as well. Some of these people have moved on since then, but some have been doing it for a good long time, which is great. No, you gotta share numbers, right? Given that it's been a crazy couple of years, given we've been in temp spaces and coming out of temp spaces, not a surprise that there was up and down, and then back up, I guess I should say. And they will just keep going up as we go forward. Another data point. We don't get to talk about Redmond. So Redmond is exciting on so many levels and sort of as a transition into this new space and what a new role and what I'm getting to do. And a coordinator will come on board at some point in the next couple of months to help with all this. Redmond, we are seriously, like everybody, engaged with doing everything about Redmond. And so we're currently looking at what that's gonna look like for Redmond. Obviously, we're gonna need Shelving and we're gonna need paging support, which is our bullet polls for folks who put them on hold. But we're also offering a new opportunity, which is a makerspace support and a building docent, which is really super exciting. And I just today reached out to volunteers, those that were in Redmond that came to downtown Bend and East Bend to continue volunteering and said, you guys have been volunteering consistently with us. You get first dibs. What would you like to do? And 2 of the 5 are interested in the docent, which is really lovely. I'm really excited about that. And I turn to you guys because it's like, it's gonna be a great opportunity. It may not be a long-term opportunity. It may be 6 to 12 months. We don't know yet. But I was really excited about that. No makerspace takers yet, but there will be. I'm certain of that. After these folks get back to me shortly, I will reach out to all the former volunteers who had been in Redmond before we went to temp space because they all went on hiatus, to see what they would like to do. And I'm also gonna reach back a little further to those that left us during COVID, for all various reasons, just to see if there might be interest in returning, which will be about 70 people, which is very exciting. I also have about 25 people between, I think probably 2022 and now, who have said, when it opens, I want to come. So I have these prospective volunteers, or we do, that will be coming on, we hope, a good half, the more will come on board, because we'll have lots of open. We'll have lots of need. So there's a lot of communication going on with former volunteers and community members. As I said, all of this revolves around a lot of communication because what you do when you're reaching out to your volunteers. A lot of great trainings, investing in what they're doing to help us. Obviously appreciation for everything they do. One of the things that I'm based in downtown Bend now, right off the workroom, and I will hear staff as volunteers are walking out after their shift, giving appreciation. See you next week. Thanks for all you're doing. Which is on a daily basis we do, but we'll have an event in April or May downtown and across the district. That'll be library-based appreciations. So Redmond is really, really right at the top of everyone's list at the moment, which is great. So the train man, somebody, the stickers.
Yes.
The train man is coming. The train man. He'll be on site at downtown Bend the 14th to the 23rd of December. I reached out just today to volunteers who supported it last year. And I filled 5 spots that we needed out of 9 in probably an hour. It's that much fun for volunteers to come and support. And what we do is we do crowd control, as I mentioned, up there. How many can go in, how many come out, and everyone has a great time. So this is all to say, you should come. It's a lot of fun. The other thing to share with you as we go forward, and what we're gonna do with volunteer services is we're hoping to create some additional partnerships. There are partnerships happening already with community engagement, with librarians, and all kinds of events, but we're gonna look at different ways that we can engage and create partnerships with other organizations. Things like the Latino Community Association to try and bring in those that are bilingual, multi-language, whatever, non-speaking English speakers, just to sort of try and build that up a little bit. Things like the Opportunity Foundation, we do at downtown Bend have several individuals that come who have disabilities that we support, where they come with supported personnel. So we're gonna look forward to doing more of that as we go forward. I'm pretty excited about what we're doing going forward. You know, we're in a good position to support the strategic plan and share ideas and glean ideas and all that good stuff that we do on a regular basis in our libraries with all the programs and services that we offer. And just find a way to bring in more volunteers to support. But circling back, and I'll wrap there, is, you know, it's all about need. You know, one never really wants to have volunteers on site with nothing to do. So as all these exciting things develop, Central's gonna be very exciting with more opportunities as well. And the other thing we're looking at is internships. So that'll be a fun moment too. Internships both in the high school level, college. You know, it's a nice pathway maybe to employment, but also to give It's a nice service to the library. So I think that's where I'm gonna round. If you have questions, I'm calling for those.
Judy, what does the docent position look like?
Well, at the moment, it's still being developed, but it's primarily what will happen, and as I understand it, please, ladies, chime in, is it's a building docent, so it's a brand new building, and so there's new art, there's new, all these things that we're gonna be able to tour around, and the collections, where they located, the kids' activity space.
Yeah.
So they'll just sort of get a base understanding of what the
Yeah.
building's all about.
Great.
Yeah.
And
That's a great
all the
idea.
lead stuff, why it's building lead.
Right, and the-
Yeah, and that's,
There's
I was,
just so much,
Yeah.
so much that we need to have people that are informed, that know, that have, kind of a script and possibly even in Stevens Ranch, maybe we have scheduled tours.
Yeah.
For people that drop in, we don't have to wait to get on schedule, so.
That's a great idea.
The things that you see at museums are kind of.
what I can remember when the Unitarian Church opened here, they had little placards. I particularly remember the bathrooms explaining what the sustainability features of the bathrooms were and exactly how all that worked, and they explained the LEED process, and it was really, because I mean, I think we've invested in LEED certification, and these are some of the biggest public buildings that will have that status, and so it's really a good opportunity for other people to learn about it and learn how to achieve. So kind of a demonstration project for the community.
No, it's great. I mean, there's just a great opportunity to teach. I actually have one more slide apparently, and this is actually from my presentation from last year. Because I was here after this happened in January. So these are images from last year, but the Volunteer Expo is happening again in January. We have a list of 70+ organizations we'll reach out to. It will be a lottery because it's so popular that it used to be first come, first served, but everyone who had been in the expo knew that, and so they were really quick, and so people who had yet to experience the expo as an organization lost out. So now we'll do a lottery and pick. We are able to do 20 organizations, but when they have Central, that'll be another story for Ben, but also in Redmond, we'll have a bigger location, and we will do Redmond as well. Somewhere in 2025. I think that's it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's always really inspirational to see all the things that our volunteers do for us, because they do save substantial amounts of money. Provide great service. So, next up is first quarter financial.
I'm not sure how to follow something that amazing. So I guess the most exciting thing about what I'm about to tell you is, remember last year when in October, for the October review, in the November board meeting, we did the audit plus the first quarter. We're not going to do that this year. So it's going to be half as long, and then we'll talk about audit report at next board meeting. But yeah, we're going to take a look at first quarter financials. I like to think of the first quarter financials as kind of our baseline. It's just a little bit of a self-check. Where did we land when we developed the budget? How close did we hit the mark with how we thought we would start the year? It's a little early to get trends and a sense of like where things are going. Are they staying on track? Are they veering off? And do we need to make adjustments? But they're a good early look to identify things that we might want to keep an eye on as we go. So if we look at the cash reconciliation report, which is that first page of data on the quarterly, all the numbers are comparing well to where we expect them to be. There was an overall drop of about 15 million, 18 million in the fund balance, but the vast majority of that corresponds to spending on the bond project. So all of the other balances are really consistent with where things typically land on the first quarter year-over-year comparisons. Remember that the November tax turnover is where we see the bulk of our tax receipts and revenue inflows. And so you do see first quarter being kind of that that low watermark for even for the general fund balance as well, and then you start to see the inflows again coming in. There's no other big things to highlight on this report, other than a reminder that accounts payable looks like a large number right now, but about a third of that is the retainage that we owe to the contractors for the building projects. So there's a portion of the work that gets held back until the completion of the project. And we account for that in our cash rec report as amount owed in the future. It's due to them at the end of the project. And so it shows up as that a portion of that large number of accounts payable there. So then we look at the financial highlights. This is the text that goes with all the other report pages. And working our way through, so we start with the general fund. We're a quarter of the way through the fiscal year. Resources, so we're looking at about 49% resourced. Again, as I mentioned, so tax receipts really are going to show up mostly in the Q2 report. And we'll see a big jump in resources from 49% to something closer to like 90 or 95%. And then the contracts with Jefferson and Crook County for the interlibrary agreements, and then the law library MOU are both accounted for in this report in the first quarter. As far as expenditures go, again, a little early to tell tracking and trending, but in general, things are looking like there's no major areas of concern. There's a couple of places where we're going to keep an eye on things. So first of all, personal services, benefits, salary, personnel, that's showing at 21% of the budget expended. And that's one line item where we would expect to see something close to tracking of a quarter each period, except for the fact that we also know that we have that hiring ramp up for Redmond. So we're bringing people on now to start in Redmond. And so we will see a bigger jump in the second quarter, and then it will start to look more linear for the rest of the year as all those positions are filled. All of those are in the budget and covered. And so we feel like right now, at least it looks like we're tracking to where we thought we would be in the first quarter with that. For materials and services, we're showing 26% of the budget expended, but that comes with a little bit of an asterisk. And this is where I wanted to highlight for you areas that we are definitely keeping an eye on during this fiscal year. When we put together the budget, we identified a couple of areas that we thought were part of the bond project, and we actually budgeted it out of the materials and services expense, out of Fund 400, out of the bond projects fund. And then during the audit period, we received guidance from bond counsel as we were going through some of the data, and the auditors had recent questions. We went back to bond counsel and asked for clarification on two particular items. One was the cost of moving existing materials out of and into libraries. And then the other one was the cost of renting the temporary space in Redmond, and the temporary spaces in general. And the word that the bond counsel came back from, the guidance that came back, was that those are actually more appropriately covered out of general funds, that they are not part of a bond fund expenditure. The key reason for that was that things coming out of the bond fund need to be capitalized. So what we're talking about when we're talking about moving existing pieces of equipment is something that already has a capital value on our books. So if you're moving it from point A to point B and then back to point A, you haven't added any value. There's no additional capital value to that. So that has to come out of and just an operating expense. And that one, the moving costs, are something that we're tracking in this current report as part of our non-employee labor. Now, when we put together the budget, and for several years past, non-employee labor basically covers small, one-time extraneous jobs where we need additional, very specific kind of like just hands-on labor, but not something that falls into a defined category, such as like an outside vendor for HVAC work or for lighting. So we have a small amount in our budget for it. the cost of the moving is higher than that. And so you'll see in the report, if you look at that data on, what is that page? I think 6 or 7, the general fund table. You'll see that that non-employee labor number, we budgeted it at 14,000, and we've already expended 28,000 under that category. In general, that's not a cause for concern from a management standpoint, as long as we have other areas of the materials and services budget that we're underrunning that we feel can cover that unplanned higher expense. Same thing for rent on the Redmond temporary library. So that rent can't be capitalized because it's rentable leased space, and so it needs to come out of our operating fund. And so that's showing up on the rent line of that data as a additional rent that was not in the budget that we put together for 24-25. So what we're doing is we're keeping track as we go and looking at the overall trend of spending under materials and services each quarter, and we'll be making an assessment at some point when I give this quarterly report. I may raise to the board the idea of the way things are going, we will exceed the appropriation on materials and services, and we need to consider having a supplemental budget for the fiscal year. We're not there yet at all based on the overall trend. Well, the overall first quarter, we don't have enough data points for a trend, so we'll be watching it very closely. So those are the two that I definitely wanted to identify for your attention. The third one in the general fund is books. As you'll recall, the other guidance that we got in the middle of the budgeting process was that books, physical books, should be capitalized and should be treated as a capital outlay. So we did budget for that in this fiscal year when we put together that budget, but this is the first fiscal year you're seeing it. So we have a much higher budget for capital outlay than you've seen in prior years. And you're seeing that getting spent here. So we're tracking 22% of our overall capital outlay budget in the first quarter. And because the vast majority of it is physical books in that capital outlay category. And books are also one of those things that we tend to purchase at a linear rate throughout the year because we're continually refreshing books, getting new collections. You know, it just tends to not be these peaks and valleys, but rather pretty much of a spread across the year. And so we're seeing that here in the report here. All right, I'm going to pause before we go to the other funds because that's a lot of big information out of general fund. I wanted to see if you had any questions there.
I had a question about that first statement under resources about fund balance lower than anticipated.
Yeah.
Are taxes coming in at a slower rate or what is that?
Yeah, so this one was one that Todd and I took a look at when I put together this report and we reviewed it. This year, our CPA and our auditing team got together on how we account for what they call the fair market value adjustments of things like our LGIP account. In most years, from what I understand, although I've never seen it, it always happens every year because the last 3 years have just been a high interest rate kind of environment. But in many years, your fair market value adjustment, it doesn't change the ending balance on your LGIP accounts because the accounts, I guess the easiest way to put it is that as long as the value of money keeps pace with the LGIP return, then you don't have these variations. But as soon as the LGIP return starts outstripping the value of money based on current rates of inflation, you have to account for that in what they call a fair market adjustment. So for years now, the way we've been doing that is we've been marking that in the fund accounting that I report on, as well as what's called the government-wide accounts that our CPA reports on in the annual financial statement. This year, they came to an agreement that it doesn't make a lot of sense to make a fair market adjustment on June the 30th of one fiscal year, only to back it out on July 1st the following year. So it was almost like this phantom delta, this phantom difference on the actual value of the ending balance of these funds. And so this year, when we put together the budget, we didn't know we had that kind of agreement between the CPA and the auditors of how we would book that. And so those fair market value adjustments are what are showing us that big difference between where we thought we would end the year when we put together the budget versus where we are.
How much lower is it?
If you look at the numbers, it is close to $1 million,
904,100.
Yeah. 900, there you go, 904. Yeah.
Yes, and to give you a comparison, for the last 15 years, we have always been over by almost that amount or
Right.
more. So that is a shift. The other shift is we budgeted on 5.6% growth in taxes and, wait, I'm making sure I'm not mixing up my years, because I'm living in 2 different years. Because, yeah.
We budgeted on five.
No, that's this year, sorry. I'm
Oh,
not even
yeah,
gonna say-
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that one you won't see in the
Yes.
fund balance difference, but we
Yes.
may see, we'll have to see after November. We may see
Yes,
that our current year taxes track a little bit lower than we typically
Yes.
show it.
it's almost a percentage,
Yeah.
it's almost a little more than 1%
Mhm.
less
Yeah.
than they anticipated. So yes, we may also have less received from taxes this year.
And so one of the things that I'm planning to do when we talk in 3 months and look at the Q2 report is we'll look at Q2 of last year versus Q2 of this year and just see kind of where the overall resourcing landed percentage wise to budget last year versus this year. And if it looks like those small differences are kind of coming out in the wash because maybe some of these other numbers landed a little higher than expected too, then we won't really be super concerned. If we land significantly lower on resources, then that is an area where we'll be doing some preparation, Todd and I, in terms of coming up with some ideas to put in front of the board of here's what we intend to do in order to make sure that we're not creating a situation where we have a cash shortfall. We don't anticipate that, given that this particular budget also had something like 19 million of unappropriated amount. So we don't believe that there would be anything close to that significance. But if it looks like we're not tracking where we think we should be, we'll definitely be talking about it at the next quarterly.
Yeah, but we do have with that change with the accounting and then also the fact that I was trying to adjust in this budget, the fact that I kept making it so that we had these huge carry forwards and budgeted not as conservatively as they have in the past. And those two hit at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
On the Redmond temporary library, that's closing at the end of December, are we paying rent past that?
We are, so it was a commercial lease, it was a 3-year lease, which, we thought at the time, like, this is great, like, we were able to negotiate it down to a 3-year lease, because that's fairly low for a commercial lease. The other thing was that extra year was giving us a little bit of wiggle room if there were significant delays that we didn't know yet at the start of that project. Then we would have had that buffer. We have reached out to the owners and the landlord, as well as Compass Commercial as our real estate representative, to start talking about, basically let them know we're gonna be an early vacating tenant. It's in nobody's best interest to have a big vacant property there. It's a lot of square footage. They're gonna continue to make money off of us, but it's bad for all of the rest of their tenants. So they have an interest in filling that. And they're starting to look, and obviously it's not a great time of year to get a commercial tenant in. So until they have identified a tenant to come in behind us, either we're on the hook for it, or they offered up the idea of, well, the district could always find someone to sublease that space for 11 months, which sounds like a challenge. But yes, again, if we do get word of the ability to terminate the lease early, that would be something that we would discuss in the board meeting as a decision for the board. I suspect the board would approve a decision to vacate early off of a lease, but we will get into.
But we do have the ability to sublease.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have the ability to sublease, and the lease runs until December 31st of 2025. So we have another probably 11 months on that lease after we've fully moved out. That if we could find somebody who was willing to sublease for 11 months. Yeah, that is an option for the district to consider as well. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move us on to the other funds. So we've got the reserve fund where nothing was budgeted. So really the only activity you're gonna see quarterly on this one is accrual of interest as a percentage of the fund balance at the time. Then we look at the grant funds. Now, the grant funds are another one that I wanted to highlight for you. You'll look at the fund balance is significantly higher than what was budgeted. And why is that? You'll recall that when we moved from last year's budget to the current budget, when Todd presented the budget report for that, there were several foundation funds that we were tracking as a grant fund that by nature of the way the foundation has specified the use of funds, we felt in consultation with the accountant that we could treat them as we could earmark them in the general fund rather than treating them as restricted for that use and only that use. And so we retired things like a novel idea as a dedicated grant fund, or what's the other one, the
Youth initiative.
And collection development. So those three alone account for something like 65,000 worth of just balance. It's just fund balance. It's not, and so with the budget that Todd presented, that fund balance can be folded back into general fund. Well, on the actual accounts, we couldn't do that at the end of the fiscal year because we had to make sure everything closed out properly, and we wanted to make sure that it all was reviewed by audit. And so I held off until I gave this report, and this is the next agenda item, kind of teeing it up for you, is that we'll talk a little more about it, but what we'd like to do is we would like to in the books formally close those restricted funds, since the budget reflects that as well. And then that would essentially take this beginning balance, or the fund balance down by an amount that gets us closer to where we thought we would be. Basically, our fund balance at that point would be something on the order of 33,000 instead of 99,000, and we budgeted 32,000. And then that 65,000 would transfer into the general fund and increase that budget, that fund balance by 65,000.
So just to recap, we planned all of this. When you approved the budget, that was all considered. So that's just the accounting piece is why we're showing such a high balance forward. And once we close them out, we'll be in line.
That's right. Yeah.
So
In terms of
the only grants
Currently,
that we would have is ready to read.
That's correct. So Ready to Read is an annual grant that goes based on calendar years. So any given year, we're going to have a budget that carries 2 Ready to Read grants. If we do receive other restricted funds from other grant sources, we would obviously also be tracking that as part of our restricted grant fund set.
any grants that come in unplanned.
Yeah.
We bring it to the board to approve accepting the funds and to approve spending the funds.
Exactly. Okay. Any questions other than that? All right. Okay, so then that brings us to the capital projects fund. So this is our building projects. In terms of resourcing, tracking along there, this is one where again, the only thing that really increases the revenue is going to be as we accrue interest over time. Now, that's a large amount that we budgeted for interest revenue. Remember, that's not just revenue or interest on the LGIP accounts. It's also interest on any of the investments once they come to maturity. And we have a whole slew through this fiscal year that are going to be coming to maturity. And we'll talk about that in just a second. We'll look at the investment report. In terms of materials and services, 23% expended. So again, that's tracking pretty well to where we thought we would be. And then capital outlay at 14%, because we always give ourselves a good amount of buffer on that capital outlay number so that we make sure that we've got more than enough appropriated, given the potential for variation on costs and timings. So that, no concerns out of this one. And that brings us to the debt servicing account. The debt service fund is resourced at about 23%. Again, this is one that is funded throughout the year from tax receipts, and just like the general fund tax receipts, we see the largest upswing in Q2 on the November tax turnovers. So we'll see that one go right up to something in the mid to high 90s in the next quarter's report. And then in terms of payments, we've got one coming up in Q2. So that's our interest only payment that's due on the 1st of December. Not according to this report as of September 30th, but as of today, November 13th, we are more than well funded for that first interest payment and tracking well for the follow-on principal payment into June. Okay, so then that brings us to the investment reports. So the first one, and apologies if you're only looking at the screen, it's a bit of an eye chart. It's a bit better on the page. But really the main takeaways from this are that analysis table at the bottom. We are looking at a basket of treasury bills, and one or two that are coming out of other agencies such as Federal Farm Credit Bank and Federal Home Loan Bank. Each of those has maturities that they're coming due pretty much on a monthly basis. And the key takeaway for this one is that we've reached the stage of the building projects where cash management is really the main focus. So we're looking at when things are coming due based on the cash flow analysis that we get from the budget that Greg develops and updates monthly. And then we're making sure that we have enough cash on hand in the LGIP account to be able to quickly transfer it over to cover payments. That said, as I think you all know, that we do have a cap overall of what we can maintain as a balance in LGIP, and that's all of our LGIP accounts. So that includes general fund, and this bond project fund, and the debt servicing fund. And so we do need to make sure that we don't get over that cap, otherwise there's some other restrictions that happen. So some of the cash management will be taking a look at what our cash flow needs are, and then reinvesting some of these into very short-term, like 6-month instruments that will just come due a little bit later so that we can have it later on and not blow through especially this time of year, go through that cap, because we got all those November tax receipts as well in the accounts. Yeah. In terms of analysis and compliance, we go through this every quarter to make sure that we're complying with the district's stated policies for investment. And I'm happy to tell you that we are still in compliance. All of our investments are in government bonds other than what's in LGIP, which again is covered and approved under our investment policy. And all of them are within that time frame that we specified in the policies. And that brings me to the newest investment report. So this one is for the use of general fund and reserve fund on unappropriated amounts. So this one again is really a story about cash management, but it is slightly different because we're not running it to termination like with the bond projects. Eventually, that other report goes away, right? The bond projects are done. We're not reinvesting. This one, the hope is that we're continually addressing and identifying ways to provide a certain amount of that risk management that we talked about when we established this investment portfolio. So a couple things to highlight for this one. First of all, compliance, again, the compliance analysis, well, we've basically identified that we're in full compliance with the district's investment policy. But the thing I wanted to highlight for you here is that right now, if we look at the weighted average yield of these investments, and then we look at what the average return for LGIP is outperforming these investments. But this is why it's important to basically not put all your eggs in one basket, right? Because there will be times, and in speaking with our investment brokers, they think that there are several indicators that are pointing to some decreases in interest rates over the next year that would basically diminish bond yields, increase bond yields if we can make our investments wisely now. So the timing in the next year, we may actually see that LGIP is not performing as well in the short term versus some of these longer term investments that we're hoping to make. And so we'll maintain balance in each so that we can offset those returns and make sure that we're stabilizing the risk for the district. Okay. In terms of what's coming up in the next 3 months, I've talked about it a couple times, but with that influx of cash from the tax receipts in November, we'll be sitting down with the broker and identifying if we have an amount in the LGIP account that looks like it is both above that cap that we're trying to maintain, and also within that amount of the unappropriated funds for the year, we will earmark some of that for additional investments in this portfolio. And so we would see in the next quarter report a few more rows showing up here. Probably between 7 million and 9 million that would be available for investment. And again, we'll be doing some analysis, Todd and I and the investment brokers in coming months. Any other questions?
I have a question that's way down the line, but just for interest. If we have funds left over from the bond
Yes.
that we didn't spend, which would be a nice thing to have, but what do we do with those? We
Yeah.
can't really give them back.
Well, so the terms of our bond, the terms of the way it's structured for what we issued in terms of debt. We're very restricted in what we can do with that money. So if it turns out at the end of all these projects, we come in under budget, that's a fantastic message to share with the taxpayers of this district. It's great news. What does it mean with that balance? My understanding is that balance goes toward the debt. So it pays down the debt burden that the taxpayers have approved by the ballot measure. And so ultimately the taxpayers would benefit. That said, I believe it essentially reduces the overall balance, which means functionally it reduces the final payment. So the benefit to the taxpayers is a long-term benefit. It's not like a kicker, the annual kicker or anything. Taxpayers won't see that coming back to them, but they might have a lower tax bill on that last year of the payment. All right. So with that, I would like to talk a little bit about the memo that was in the board packet. We talked to this already, but just to kind of summarize what we're asking the board to approve. We identified those 3 foundation funds. And also there were 3 grant funds from last year that we more or less ran down to a small non-material final budget balance. So like SDIS grant, that's been on the books with a 48-cent balance. And I'd kind of like to close that out, right? And so we have a list of 6 funds that we would like to retire. 3 of them are those 3 foundation funds that we are rolling into and budgeting for out of general operating funds. The other 3 are that OHSU, the walking study that Rhea presented to the board last year. The 2023 ready to read, which again, fully expended down to, it's less than $1 again. And so that one, we would just like to retire and just get it off the books. And the same thing with that SDIS grant. So all told, the funds have a remaining balance of $65,282, which we would transfer over into the general fund prior to closing and retiring them. And as I mentioned, like probably 65,000 of that, the vast majority of it, let's say, is those 3 foundation funds. So that's what I would like to do. I'd like to open it up to any questions you might have for me about what that means, but it's essentially a bookkeeping entry on our part in our funding activity.
Will we see that balance transfer as like a miscellaneous revenue in the general fund?
Yeah, so the way I've done it in the past when I retired these grant funds that close out is it shows up as a transfer to and from in the funds. So it'll show on the to from line, and then it will show up in this report, the quarterly report, in that fund balance. So it'll show an uncommon entry on that report. You'll see activity this period for the fund balance, which you shouldn't really, right? In general, you'll see it, you'll never see that because that's your carryover. And so you'll see a reduction on the grant fund of activity this period, and it'll show like a negative 65,000. And then in the general fund, you'll see that balance, that fund balance increased by the same.
My only question would be for Chantal, does this allow us adequate accountability from the foundation as far as when people make specific donations and say, I want this to go for X? You feel comfortable with running it through the general fund and being able to tell the donor that we complied with their wish?
Good question. We're getting less restricted monies like that.
Right.
So, and because we're not seeking restricted monies, so before we used to say, please give for collection
This,
development.
right.
And for early learning and for a novel idea. We're no longer going to be asking those, questions. So it'll be more that when we get funds that come into the foundation, let's say someone does want to give it to early learning or something like that, it'll be a discussion that I think we're gonna have to have and say this one was earmarked for this purpose, and then it goes into the general fund, but with an emphasis towards the youth services budget.
Right.
And one of the things that the accounting software allows for us to do is to create projects. And so we can track the spending trends and history on any given project. And so we could designate a project for any earmarked funds and only use that project code when we're specifically spending against that.
Okay, I know that that was kind of a remnant of the past as
Yeah.
far as to what people were donating, but I want to make sure that
No, it's a great
we honor
question.
donor wishes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and part of that was, it wasn't ever really a grant. So
Right,
it
no.
was more of a donation, and that's why we felt like we should.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is more appropriate, but just as
Yeah.
long as we
Yes, no, great question.
honor their wishes. Thank you.
So I did include some suggested language for the recommended motion, but if a board member was comfortable raising the motion and wanted to use whatever they felt was best.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I will move to approve the closure of expired grant funds in the district's fund accounting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Greg, you want to do the carry? Sure.
That's it. Yes. Right, so next up is our downtown Bend 100% construction design. And beaming from satellite is Matthew Alvarez. And thank you, Matt. You're the giant head in front of the room right now.
Great.
So this
Nice
is,
to see you all.
this is a very exciting point for us. For the last 4 years, basically, we've been bringing to you designs for your approval. And this is basically the last one. This is the final one for downtown Bend, and that's our final project. So we're really excited to share what we have with you. Matt?
Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, and let me share my screen here. Yeah, so it's really exciting to see that we're completing this last project, downtown Bend. And I have the site plan of the existing building. I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. On the exterior, there's very little that is happening. We're repairing a lot of spalling concrete pathways and anything that needs some repairs to it. But the majority of what we're doing on the exterior that is shown in these blue zones are adding or repairing the snow melt system that in some cases isn't working properly anymore. So we've got a zone right outside of the service entrance and the loading dock. Sorry.
Sorry, we were just playing with the computer. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So the loading dock area and the ramps associated with it will have some snow melt. We have 2 ADA parking spots at the northwest corner of the building that will have a new snow melt system. And what we want to do is bring in kind of a pathway, an easy pathway to that new north entrance that will access a new community room that's going to be on the north side of that building. And then we're extending that snow melt to the steps that will connect to the north sidewalk area along Louisiana Avenue. As we come around to the front of the building, that snow melt system will come out to the bus stop, as well as connect to the 2 ADA stalls that are on Wall Street. With regard to landscaping, on the north and south sides, all the existing trees are going to remain, all the large trees, and really a lot of the ground cover foliage will be enhanced. There are a couple of trees and bushes that will also remain that were donated on the south side. So that plaza with the enclosed fence will be removed, and it will be more of a landscaped area that you will see from the kids area, the bay window there. There'll be a new pathway that connects that egress staircase down to the sidewalk along Kansas Avenue. The only trees that are going to be replaced are the ones that are along Wall Street, the 6 small trees here that are kind of tight up to the building. Those are all going to be new and sized appropriately for the kind of limited area that is in that landscaped area. The exterior of the building, not a whole lot is changing as well. We're electing to replace all of the clerestory windows, which currently have a combination of clear and opaque or frosted glass. All of those windows, as well as their frames, are going to be replaced on that upper clerestory. The front entrance sliding glass doors that we know have been really problematic are going to be replaced with swinging doors at that front entrance. And then on the north elevation, you'll see that we're adding that new entrance for the community room. On the ground floor, we're really going to be opening up and reconfiguring a lot of the ground floor that currently is dedicated for staff areas, particularly on this north side of the building. So as you come through the vestibule, you're really going to be able to come into a lobby that then looks out through the kids area all the way out through that south window bay, and then through the north to that new community room and the windows that kind of look out onto a new plaza that is just outside of the north new entrance, community room entrance. The previous community room is now going to be subdivided into a small creative room, as well as a dedicated story time room. And there is an operable door or partition that will allow that whole space to be combined when that's desired. Other changes, so you'll see that the staff area is really kind of made smaller. There's going to be an AMH area, and then the staff area that is very similar to kind of the layout that you've seen in the Redmond library. In the kids area, all the shelving that you see that is in color are all on mobile wheels and so can be reconfigured in a multitude of different ways. And then we have plus and greater than our early learning designers providing us with an early learning environment here in the southwest corner. You'll see that this is kind of an early axonometric view of that first floor. So not all of the shelving is kind of up to date. But in the kids area, this whole wall that you see as you come in through the lobby will be those early learning graphics that you've seen in Sisters in the Pine and even Sun River. That whole wall will wrap around to the south edge here and provide a lot of color. And then you'll also see kind of an early learning environment that I'll talk about a little bit later. So here you all are very familiar with the existing library. As you come in through that lobby space, all the hold shelves are really kind of cutting off your view of the library. And these are some early study views where as you come in through the vestibule, you'll be able to kind of look down and see right out through that south window bay with the creative room and the story time on the left with the early learning over there. And then if you look to the north, you'll see right through to those glass doors that connect to the community room, the new community room. These are some of the elevations that Plus and Greater Than have put together. The wall graphics are still in design, so these are kind of placeholder graphics, but they'll be in the same vein of what you've seen in Sisters in the Pine. But they're really working on a theme of kind of downtown Bend. So there's little elements like a fishing hole here where kids can kind of pretend to fish like they might do at Mirapon. There's a gear cabinet that has kind of camping gear in it. And then there'll be some carts very similar to what you've seen in the other libraries, including kitchen play as well as block play. And then in the center of the space, you can kind of see the map over here or the floor plan over here. They're creating a separate freestanding structure, kind of mimicking a downtown village or an imagination village, where kids can kind of recreate different imagination play like a farmer's market or some kind of retail. So there'll be little toys that are stored in these boxes below and kids can kind of interact in different ways throughout this area. As we go upstairs, we are making some adjustments to the staircase on the level 1. Currently, there is an intermittent landing there that we're removing, and we're changing out a lot of the materials down here. Kind of the dark floor will be replaced with a light gray terrazzo that will extend up the stairs. So you can kind of see that intermittent landing has been removed. And that's really going to give that lobby a lot more gracious area in front of the elevators, as well as kind of down to the hallways to the bathrooms there. And these are just a few of the final materials that are using. You can kind of see the terrazzo flooring that is located here, that is on both the ground floor lobby, up the stairs, and then on the landing at level 2. We have a series of different carpets that are both field and then accent carpets. And then we're wrapping the elevator walls and the stair walls in a white oak that will match some of the shelving that you've seen also in some of the branches. And then there are areas of fabric wall coverings and upholstery elements that will also add some color to the interiors. So this is kind of one of the most recent renderings that we're showing of that white oak at the elevator lobby, where we've got some self-checkouts, the holds and kind of new, hot and new books being displayed kind of right in front of that new community room that you can kind of see in the distance there. As we go upstairs, for the most part, the bones of the upstairs will remain the same. The big transformation is going to be in the shelving, where you can kind of see as well all the colored shelving are those elements that are on wheels and that are going to be reconfigurable. And so really that central bay with the high clerestory ceiling is really going to open up. You're not going to see those lines of tall shelving that are currently there right now. And then on the east side of the library, there will be additional shelving. Some of them that you see in this dark gray will be fixed, but we're really prioritizing kind of the areas for patrons to sit and read their books, both on that north and south window bays, as well as kind of the areas along the east side, which people really tend to kind of enjoy. And then we're increasing the number of meeting rooms. So there's a large meeting room in the area that was formerly dedicated for staff areas. So a large meeting room. We're adding an all-gender restroom or a family restroom on level 2. And then this area here on the northwest corner is dedicated for the teen space. So again, some of the study rooms here and here, a dedicated staff room with printing located here. And then on the southwest corner is the computer stations, which will be moved from the center of the building over here, along with a co-working area. And here is the axon that kind of shows a little bit of the feel of how large or how tall those shelving units will be. They're all going to be much lower than the existing shelving that's there. The teen zone here with some seating, the computer stations, and the co-working area located there. And I guess, let's see if I, okay. So these are a couple of views that were kind of done early on. So they're not the latest and greatest here, but it's a view as you come up to the second floor, looking back over at that computer area and the co-working zone, but kind of getting a feeling of how much lower those shelving areas or elements are going to be. I don't know why these renderings need to be flattened. Here's a view of the teen area. So there's a low shelving element located here with kind of a trying to create kind of a somewhat visible but kind of dedicated area for the teens to hang out at. And then here's a view kind of as the staircase is on just to the left here, but kind of a dedicated area of seating looking out to the east there, but with some lower shelving in that zone. And then I think this is a more recent rendering that we're trying to kind of put all the fabric and the correct carpet size. So there's a field carpet with like a warmer accent carpet that runs down the center of the building. You're seeing the co-working area with the computer stations. There's a couple of areas that get tall booths that we also have similarly in Redmond, but that you can kind of see the overall average of the shelving heights along that central spine is much lower and kind of will really open up that kind of central bay there. So that is, I think, my presentation, and happy to answer any questions if people have them.
The downtown library, everything have to be moved, I'm assuming, like it.
Well, when we open the central library, yes, everything will be moved out.
Downtown.
Yeah.
And go to central then?
Well, mainly our staff. And then most of this is new furnishings and books, so.
And so this library will be closed, essentially moved to central.
Yes, for about a year.
And we won't have to rent another space, is what I'm saying.
No, because we'll have the central library.
And we'll also have this building available for if there are materials that are coming out and need to be held somewhere, if we don't have the storage, et cetera. Yeah, we've got this.
Oh, that's true too,
Yes.
yeah. And how big, what are the meeting room sizes when you said the one up on the second floor was large? About how many people could that one accommodate?
That one will accommodate around 15 people. Like if you've been to the Redmond Library, the upstairs meeting room in Redmond, it's roughly the same size as that meeting room.
And then the community room downstairs would hold how many?
Yeah, I think we're targeting somewhere around 75 people that it can accommodate. And again, it's very similar. The Redmond Library is just under 40,000 square feet, and it's almost the same size as the downtown Bend. I think it's 38,000. So what we tried to do was try to create rooms that are of the similar size, knowing that the program wanted to be very similar.
And as far as the walls in that community room go, are those retractable? I mean, could you increase seating capacity by expanding out into the rest of the lobby?
We could. It is a little different because of the egress that we have through the north entrance. So what we created was a community room on the north side with after hours access through this door, and that these kind of double doors or pair of double doors would be able to open up into the lobby area. But it's a little different from Redmond, which does have a retractable wall that allows the two meeting rooms to separate so that you could have two different meeting rooms simultaneously used. We don't have that here just because of the egress issues. We couldn't separate them and get both of them to egress out.
Yeah, I was more interested in that back wall that goes into the lobby, whether there could be overflow seating out into the
Yeah.
lobby if it was a large.
And I'd say we did discuss that, and the big thing we came to is we have the central library, that
Right.
if there was an event that wanted to be that big, then we would,
just have it over there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see there is a difference from Redmond, and that we have created this children's space for story time and creative space. So it's almost like taking those rooms you can divide in Redmond and splitting them into two different areas.
Right, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So the creative space, will that be like a maker space, or is that just, okay?
Yes.
So we'll have the materials there as
Yes,
well.
we have to get our terminology down. We keep using both, but I think we've landed on makerspace.
Okay,
Yes,
And that could be used for
Yeah.
kids program, kids makers.
and adults.
And adults.
And we purposely put it right as you come in, so that if it's for adults, we don't have them going all the way through the kids area, that they can go right there.
Right. What is going on in between the lobby and the maker space, those two small areas?
No, good
Is
question.
that's a small meeting room? Ah, here we go. And a restroom, okay.
There, one's a restroom, and then, also, there are two study rooms right off of the co-working area as well.
Right,
We
yeah,
kind of
that,
skipped over this.
yeah,
And that study room is presently in downtown Bend, it's just that the door is different. You have
Right.
access it from.
it's the old
vestibule.
friend's shop, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This one, we really wanted to keep, for example, that's the one that Thrive uses.
Right.
And their clients really appreciate being able to pop right in.
Yeah.
Right. But we are creating another family restroom over here for kind of any kids needing to use the restroom quickly during story time. And then a small wet room or a sink for anyone needing to kind of wash their hands off of any glue or things that they're doing in the the creative makerspace.
Any other questions? Looks good. I would entertain a motion if people do not have any additional questions for Matt. Todd?
I'll move to approve the overall site plans and major components outlined in the architect's presentation of the downtown Bend Library facility.
No second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Matt.
Great,
That's
thank
exci-
you.
That's exciting.
It's exciting. Well, it was great to see you all.
Yeah, great to
Thank
see
you.
you. Thanks so much. The last of our designs. That is a landmark, isn't it? Okay, so we're down to Greg with
Yes.
many reports.
As always.
Yes.
So, jumping right in, of course, schedule wise, I think the big thing that changed on the schedule was the adjustment of the planned opening for Redmond, where we pushed it from December out into January, just to give DPL staff, for them to have the appropriate amount of time to prepare for that. It's a big event, so. Other than that, the schedule is generally moving right along, most active construction project being Central. It's moving right in alignment with Kirby's overall construction schedule. They gave us an update of the construction schedule just this month, and they are right on track, well into the major structural elements, as you have seen in the pictures and stuff. They're tracking right to that, so that's a really good sign of how we've done there. Those structural elements are gonna wrap up here the end of this year, where the frame is all done, and it's gonna become a focus and discussion about the skin. And so you'll start to see wall panels going up, glass going up as we move into the new year, so it's a pretty exciting time there of how that's all come together. In our discussion just today during our team meeting was, how are they doing with materials and availability and everything? And so far, everything's tracking really well, I remember when we first started, we were talking about the COVID impacts and the supply chain and having to really look out early, and we've always continued to do that, and it's really paid off well. It is that, we have a lot of materials stored on site already that's arrived in there early, mechanical units that need to go up on the roof. They told us today that all of the roofing materials are gonna be delivered this coming month, for the entire project, and get stored, and then they'll get installed as we move forward. And so it's just really good to have that kind of activity of materials arriving and waiting to go in instead of just in time. Just in time always sounds great, lean and mean, right? But it's kind of scary when you're building and it's like, I need it, it's not here. So that's been going really well overall on our schedule. So there's not any other real changes there. We're studying our plan for downtown Bend. We've hit our major milestone of getting to the 100% plans. We're really gonna work out and say, when's the right time to turn the plans into the city to start the plan check process in order to get approvals, and then pull permits in order to have them align with our construction that starts after Central. So a little bit of reevaluation of what we're plan to do and what we want to do as we go forward. It really doesn't, it's just to kind of make sure it's efficient and effective for us as we go forward. So from schedule standpoint. On the budget, probably the big thing that happened in the budget, and there was a bunch of budget changes, and I tried to outline them in there, was the dollars that Robert spoke about that we can't apply to the bond. What I did is I went through things that we've had to back out that may have been paid. is we did that, and then I looked at all the commitments that we had budgeted or planned to be budgeted for the moving and costs associated with the library, temporary library. And transferred all those dollars out of the project into the master reserve. So you saw, 1.1 million move out of those projects and in. So it's still in the total budget. It's just back into the contingency. And I think, as we go forward, we're gonna be looking at how are we managing and handling moving stuff, handling stuff, and what's the best way to do that as we go forward and see if there's anything there that we need to plan for and work with DPL on how that's gonna happen. So, but I think this just helped to say, okay, let's take these commitments out so that we don't think we're spending these dollars. It's like, we've got to get it back into contingency. Overall, the contingency is, over 8% of our overall budget, 18 million. So it's really healthy contingency at this point. We're not seeing any other big exposures and stuff. There was anything that had any concerns. There's some expenditures, and you saw where there's some adjustments in some of the budgets where we had some savings in permits and fees, and then we had some overruns or expenditures in some of our FF&E items, shelving, some of it, a little bit in some furniture and things, and that's based especially on Central and Downtown Bend of where our current estimates coming in based on those designs as they get finalized. So, but as a whole, I think everything is really still very healthy. On Central being the big project, a lot of dollars were spending on construction and Kirby's GMP there. They're probably about 95% contracted out, which means they've awarded all their subcontracts to all of their subs and vendors. They still have some that they're wrapping up, but it's really verified. Okay, the budget is very sound. It's in good health. They didn't have any big misses and, used up their construction contingency and the dollars that they have in the GMP to build the project. And so as we go through very detailed cost reports that they give us so that we can see what they're doing and how they're doing on that standpoint, and feel really good about that they have ample funds in the GMP and plan for the what ifs, the surprises. As we finalized our plans and issued them, the last amendments, they were able to look at them all and say, yeah, we've anticipated all of this. And so there's really no adjustments to the GMP or those plan revisions. They have funds available within. So that was, very positive. As we're wrapping up Redmond, we're at the end of the GMP, and it's still looking real positive that we won't be increasing that GMP, and ultimately there'll probably be some savings coming back out of it. So, as we adjust the contingencies within the project, a couple months ago where I made some budget adjustments and moved some of them and brought some of them down a bit. Still feel very comfortable about that, that, hey, we're not gonna be spending money there for unforeseen. But we do still have money planned in each of the projects for, does the district want to do something that, now that it's up and operating, is there something we didn't do, or do we need to fix something, change something? As you open up a building, you find those things. And so there's reasonable amounts of dollars set aside to address anything that may come up, and give the district that ability to do that. Throughout, as we look at all of the different cost centers within each project, they're all tracking really well from a budget standpoint. So that was the biggest changes in the budget that I had out there. Again, nothing real surprising or shocking other than the adjustments from the auditor. From a contracting standpoint, there's 3 or 4 updates that we'll go through that were separate. Otherwise, it's really contract maintenance at this time. You know, we don't have a lot of new ones going, but the award of change orders and adjustments and contracts to our existing vendors for these projects as they go. On downtown Bend, you know, we're always looking at where we're at budget, and with the 100% drawings, Kirby is again rechecking their budget and that's cost estimate for us. We've gone through and checked our early learning and furniture and those things, and those are also all tracking, you know, and we're looking at them saying, okay, what's our estimate today for work that we're gonna do in 2 years from now? And still sounds good, or the estimates are really sound. We have good contingencies built within them to account for that inflation, escalation potential. So overall, from a cost budget standpoint, I would say we're in really good shape. Real happy with that. From an overall design construction standpoint, you know, we're getting it. You heard tonight, the last design. We've had design meetings every Tuesday for 3 years. And we are now ending them. And I think in the last 2 months, we've had 1 or 2 per month. And it's just because the amount of design reviews and decision is really reducing. And so there's less happening there, and it's more now focused on construction. With Central being the main one, of course, and that, again, it's moving along real well. We're not having changes to our plans significantly. Our plans are functioning well. We're not having any big surprises that the team, being the design team and the contractor team, can't really address within our parameters of schedule and budget. And so that's been real healthy. They have a really good working relationship, our teams do, and I think that's been positive all the way through the projects. But you can see it in our OAC meetings, you know, there's good communication, it flows well. The contractor and the architect are really working hand in hand together. It's always nice to not see conflict or, you know, just difficult efforts as far as communication and coordination between them. So a high level of collaboration still going on, and really looking at continuing the lessons learned. As we come out of Redmond, it has the most significant lessons learned that affect Central because of the similar building types. Only Central is Redmond on steroids. It's a much bigger, more complex building in size and what we're doing there. But I think the team has done a really good job of looking at it. So our Central team has gone up to sit with the Redmond team construction wise and talk about what did they go through, what did they learn, what were their experiences. So Kirby has done a really good job of fostering that within their team. That includes with the designers and stuff. Our team is doing the same. That goes through all the way through the FF&E and stuff. So we'll talk about some of the shelving, you know, learning more about how the shelving wants to be set up, and made some more changes to the shelving based on our Redmond experience of where it could be more functional for the district. And it's where the more movable shelving and how it's laid out, circulation. I think we continue to learn constantly. Cable management, wire management, as you think about this. That's been one of our big things that we've been really figuring out, and it's one where we're learning some stuff on Redmond, and we're going to be applying it over to Central because we have a lot more than at Central. How the furniture and the shelving and all of that gets powered up and has data and everything into it. So you know, those are the kind of the activities and things that are going on outside of building a big building. So outside of that, I think that's kind of it in a highlight. what's happened, what's going on? Questions about the projects?
I have a question, just a clarification. It's said in here in several different places. The building mock-up is progressing and being evaluated by the team.
So when you, if you happen to drive by the site, out on what is the southeast corner, you can see a structure that is out there. And so we build a mock-up, and it's a section of that mimics components on the building. And so it'll have windows in it, it'll have different wall components, different materials. It has stone, it'll have metal, it'll have glass. Has all as many waterproofing and flashing components in it. And so the mock-up is to test all of our details and the process of how we assemble the exterior curtain wall, the exterior wall system, really. And it's really to help prove that our drawings, our design works properly, that the contractors, the subcontractors and their workmen understand how to assemble it, you know, in the layers of construction. When you think about, as you build that out, there could be about 10 layers of construction elements, waterproofing membranes and flashings and claddings, whether it's glass or windows and that. So the mock-up it's an investment into quality. And because at the end of the day, we take the mock-up down and dispose of it. It's not something you keep. But it pays dividends. So right now, our waterproofing consultant went out and looked at how it was being done and found things and said, hey, I think you need to do this differently here and figure this out. And they figure out where things, it looks great on plan, but hey, it's not fitting. And they make adjustments to it. So to me, it's we did something very similar on Redmond, smaller, but the same purpose. And with new buildings, and that's why you didn't really hear about it so much on the branches.
Right.
But with the new buildings, it's an important component to get finishes right and constructability. So.
Right, because I mean, that exterior is gonna be complex to
Yes.
build, to have all the benefits that they've designed into it.
Yeah, and it really, you look at it, it runs all different kinds of angles
Right.
to mimic as many of those as we could.
A good example for Redmond, they mocked up the brick exterior and found a number of issues that if they did it straight by how it was designed, weren't gonna work. And we're able to adjust and say, here's something we think does work, is that acceptable? And it's great to experiment with a small piece rather than the entire building.
Yeah, they go blue.
Yeah, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, it really does. It helps you get on schedule so that when you're building the actual final component, the guys know what to do and they can go faster through that process.
Right.
And so to me, they're very, very valuable tools of our business. Not everybody likes to spend the money on them because they cost money. But in my view, they save you more money long term. Because you're not tearing things out, not redoing it, not paying big change orders when you're in the middle of construction.
And it saves us on the longevity of this building too, to identify some of those building envelope issues.
Right, yeah.
Do you have the reporting capabilities to estimate how much of this project is being paid in wages to Central Oregon workers?
It would be probably possible.
Yeah.
Because of the, reporting that they have to do with prevailing wages. That they have those wages for everybody.
Yeah.
Then the only thing we really have to do is look at and say, okay, which companies do we know are Central Oregon based and their employees here? Which are coming from out of town, which can be misleading, because even though they may come over, they may still be hiring workforce locally here.
Right.
Right.
But it is actually doable by just pulling together what were all of the wages paid.
And really, I mean, even the larger question is how much of this project funds are staying in Central Oregon?
Right.
So we were walking Central Job Site this 2 weeks ago, and we were looking at the companies we were seeing. The rental yards who were delivering rental equipment, who are from here.
Right.
The crane company, Vernon Crane, you see them on Highway 97 if you drive up and down. And there's their crane there. And so even though we're hiring different subcontractors, they're also hiring all of these local companies to support that. And no, we really talked about that to promote as much as possible hiring of local subcontractors and vendors as much as we could with all, SunWest and GMGC. And so I think that made a really good effort. I think both of them being homegrown general contractors here, they have a very, very strong subcontractor base here. Even though sometimes we have to draw in some of the expertise in the bigger companies out of the valley. They do a good job of keeping a lot of it right here locally. I would say it's a very high percentage.
Like 50%?
More than 50.
More than that.
It'd be great if they could work up some kind of estimate.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I'll talk to them about that, because that's something that I think we can pull from all. The branches would be actually a much higher. SunWest, they were smaller projects, so it really allowed them to bring in almost exclusively local vendors. That would probably be almost 90% were local. Whereas with the two bigger projects, we gotta have some of the bigger subs coming in from the valley. And even some from Washington, some out of Idaho. So it did, kind of support all of the region.
Well, I think it's really important messaging for our community to know how directly the community is benefited by this fund.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
No, that's all information I think we can pull together, share it with Chantal and her group, and messaging and sharing it out to the community.
I think people appreciate that.
Mhm.
I had a question for Todd about the timing on Redmond. So this indicates that we would close the temporary library location right before Christmas and then do a soft opening on the building at the end of January. Was there any consideration given to the fact that kids are gonna be out of school for that week between Christmas and New Year's?
Well, we consider everything, but that is typically one of our lowest.
Is it really?
Yes.
Okay, well then, never mind.
Yeah,
I was just concerned that there were people that would be wanting
yeah.
to take their kids to the library, but maybe that's not when they're taking them to the library.
Yeah, it is traditionally our lowest.
Okay,
used
all right, well, I
time.
didn't,
It's
I,
very quiet.
That's surprising.
That was the time of year I usually got stuff done. But and the reality is unfortunately, we do need that month break for the training. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that in the next section.
yeah, well, no, I just had that question,
No,
and
no,
that's
that's
good
great
to know, because I didn't want,
Yes,
yeah, but I know you need the time.
yeah.
And you need everybody there, so, yeah, okay, thank you for answering that. Okay, so does anybody else have any other questions for Greg? Then I guess we can talk about the central library shelving system.
Yeah, so in July, we presented the shelving, we had it priced out, and felt like we were ready to go contract that's active. And so we came to the board, requested authorization, which you guys approved. We held off on awarding the contract. And part of it had to do with, as we were moving into Redmond, we were seeing things that, hey, we need to make these changes. And so we said, well, we're not in a rush to award the contract from a time standpoint. We had time from when we need the shelving for central. So we kind of put it on a pause, let the district go through, see the shelving as it was coming into Redmond, and then take a new look at what were we doing in central. And even in the authorization that you approved in July, there was some amount of funds there that was anticipated for changes and adjustments. Once we finalized the changes we wanted to implement into central, and then got that designed, got it blessed, and then went back to Space Saver and had them priced, it pushed us up over that authorization. So we said, okay, we needed to come back to you. And so that's what this is. This pricing that I attached in here is based on the changes that we've implemented. When we added a fairly large amount of more mobile shelving, to give more flexibility, more changes. There was a number of other things that we just were finding, hey, let's change this and change this. But it was a fresh new look at it. And so that's what pushed it up where we, to increase that signing authority.
And Greg, I'll also add, we have the advantage of learning a lot from actually seeing how the shelving works in Redmond.
Yeah.
So that affected some of this too.
Yeah, down to the ideal width of shelving. And we could adjust that to make it better for how the collection is put on to it, so.
Right.
It's interesting, there's really a science to that.
I just-
More so than I ever thought. You think, oh, they just pile the books up on there. It's not that easy.
It's over there.
So, questions about this?
So this is essentially a $58,000 increase over what we approved in July.
Yeah, I think no, 160,000. It was up to 2.5 million was the prior authorization in July, and it is now at 2,660,000. Now that has about 100,000 additional authorization level.
Okay.
Because as we go through, we will make a few more changes and, hey, let's buy another one of these or we change this, and that allows us a little bit of flexibility, but it was when I knew we were going to exceed, and if you see the actual amount that we would exceed, the prior authorization was only $8,000, but we were exceeding. And I wanted to be able to be in a position that we can handle minor changes as we go forward with this, so. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Any questions? Maybe entertain a motion.
I'll move to provide the library director with signing authority up to 100,000.
No.
Right.
Flip your page over.
Oh, I've got two more ahead. I was wondering about the same numbers. I moved to provide the library director with signing authority up to 2,660,000 for the central library shelving systems contract and change orders.
I will second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
So the next one is the Redmond shelving, and similarly, previously, the signing authority was 1,390,000. We're making some changes to that shelving now, just to make some modifications where it can function better, work better. And so it's not a huge amount of at this point. It's about 30,000 in there. But it takes the authorization level from 1,390,000 up to 1,415,000. And that captures changes that we want to implement right now and leaves a little bit of dollars for any minor changes. We're not expecting big changes at this point. If there was a big change, we would come back this weekend. So it's not a huge increase. In this case, it's a $25,000 more increase on the authorization level. And it's
Okay. Your motion?
I move to provide the library director with signing authority up to $1,415,000 for the Redmond Library's Shelving Systems contract.
Okay. Your second?
One second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay.
The next one is a reconciliation of SunWest Builders contract for work package 4. And work package 4 was the branches combined, so Sisters, Lapine, Sun River, and even East Bend. And as we've gone through the process, the board was authorizing components of it, right? We authorized the GMP for Sisters and Lapine, then we authorized the GMP for Sun River, and we did some authorizations for change orders and adjustments to those as we went through. It's one single contract for all of these. And we've done that intentionally at the very beginning to try and create a package of work that would be enticing to the generals, which I think that it did. And but here at the end, we're ready to close this one single contract. And so I wanted to reconcile everything that we have done and look at what was final cost on Sisters, final costs on Lapine, and final costs on Sun River. And ultimately, I think the summary page that I put in there, the change in authorization is from what was authorized to the increase, it increases like $16,000 overall. Now, part of that is we had some reductions on Sisters and Lapine, even though we had some changes. You can see those actually went down. One of the things that we did is a while back, we've had an authorization to change the lighting control system in Sisters and Lapine. After, as we've gone through, we chose not to implement that change, but to invest a little bit more in some training and working with the existing Watt stopper system. One, because putting it in, changing it to the Leviton system, which was the change of manufacturer, is going to be a bit invasive, and district said, let's not go back in and shut the library down for 2 or 3 weeks to do that. You know, let them live for a while, and it's something that can be done at any point in the future. So we took credits back for that, and there were some small changes of things that as we've worked through the 1-year warranty period and made small adjustments of things that, hey, we want you to change this, fix this, or do that. With Sun River, it's a final accounting of all of the adjustments that we've done with them on that. There was a few more additive costs incurred there, a lot around the exterior and the site as we went through. We always had a little bit bigger budget, but we were always not expanding it as far as we could, just watching in our dollars, but realized that we needed to do a few more improvements to the parking lot itself. Definitely more improvements to the landscaping going all the way around the building and really looking at that. As well as there were some changes on the interior of the building, but this captures all of that today. And will let us literally wrap up this GMP contract, close it out and be done. in the future, should the district consider any other work, we would then just do, it'd be a small amount, it'd be a short form type contract that would be within the limits, or we'd come back to the board, so. It's really asking you to, signing authority up to this 9,759,000. But your collective amount that you previously approved was the amount that I had on there, just to make sure I say this correct. That your previous total combined authorization level was 9,743,000. And it's a little bit more confusing because we had 3 buildings, we had pre-construction, so. Hopefully that, I laid it out to where that all made sense to
That
you.
makes sense.
But it does make it clean, right, to where if the auditor is looking at this and they look at SunWest's final contract amount, it's gonna align with this.
Any questions? Okay, motion.
All right, I move to provide the library director with signing authority up to $9,759,538.22 for the SunWest Builders Work Package number 4 CMGC contract.
Your second? I'll second. Okay, all those in favor? Alright. Motion approved.
So the last one for tonight is on Miller Bull's design contracting, so, you know, in the last time we came, which was just back, I think in June or July, we had adjusted the authorization level at that time. And it had a certain amount of dollars there for minor changes as we go through, which often we do those hourly basis with them, and we go through that, which most of these are captured in here. The one kind of big item, the one that pushed us over that needed to say, okay, I need to come back to is we need to extend Norfolk's contract on Redmond. So as the schedule has extended out there, of getting the construction work completed and the FF&E and everything installed, we've never adjusted their contract. And this actually goes back for quite almost to their original contract duration. We made schedule adjustments back in February and again in June. But we never really adjusted their time, so the duration of their construction administration was taking longer for them. And so, and that's a direct cost that they have. We have a project architect who's out every week on job site meetings and out there, and it's not just one, it's a collective group of them. And so that cost was probably the one of the larger components of this amount. It's about $70-some thousand out of this full amount. And actually, you can see it at 72,000. So that was one of the big changes. The others were minor changes in design. So when we change our shelving, we have them redesign things, you know, we do pay for those services as well as some of the other changes that we've made. And most of them are minor design changes. This brings this up front. I think in my summary, I did ask for an authorization level that at about a $50,000 additional amount in there for minor changes. If there's major changes, we would bring those back as individuals. This would be things when we want to make a little change here, a little change there, we can authorize the architect to move forward with that. We need to do it in a little bit more plain fashion. So, questions on any of that? No. And I will say all of these, I didn't say this, but all of these are in our current budget and factored in. So those expenditures are within each project budget. It's anticipated. So
We haven't tapped any reserves for any of this.
no, there was one on one of the budgets where I moved some of the contingency dollars up for that, but, that was it. But it doesn't come out of the master contingency, like where I moved those dollars, it comes out of the project contingency.
Okay. Motion? I'll move to provide the library director with signing authority for Miller Hall's contract and change order total not to exceed $17,925,000.
Gotta second that.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Motion is approved. Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you.
Right. So, our next piece of education is the employee engagement.
Yes. Very good. Okay. There a second ago. Okay. So we do an employee engagement survey every 2 years. We'll actually be shifting that to every year. After this year, we've moved to a new company that was a lot cheaper and easier for us to do it. So this is, these are always a snapshot in time. We took this one at the end of August, right as we were about to open the Sun River Library. So I'm going to kind of go over some of the high level results, talk about what they identified as some of the implications, and talk about some of the focus areas that we're starting to work on to address what's coming up. In some cases, you'll see numbers that correspond to our previous engagement survey. Since it's a new company, if the question was exactly the same, we can compare it. Otherwise, we don't have the data. So participation rates, that's a really good indication right away of engagement. And we had 93% participation rate, which is really great. Yeah, in the past, they said if you can get about 65%, you're doing really well. So a couple of things from this we have about, well, at this point, we had 94 employees. So when you see when you see 93%, it's almost, the percentage is very accurate to what we're looking at. And it's really helpful for us. We can't look at this and say, well, not everybody feels this way, because we heard from everybody. And this is really, as it says here, it's a way to connect people's connection with the library and its goals. And if we can improve that, we can improve innovation, retention, and attraction of talent, and we can have a better place to work. So this is overall, they have 5 separate questions that really relate to people's engagement. And you'll see, we're going to see this a few times. Blue is favorable. In this case, 68% felt it's favorable. Gray is basically not quite sure, neutral. Thank you. And red is unfavorable. And then the next thing is, they ask questions around a whole slew of areas. So we're going to take a look at those. These are all the areas. And they've ranked these based on what we're doing best. So how are we doing with your immediate supervisor? How do you feel like immediate supervisor? 78% are favorable there. Work-life blend is very good. Social connections, good. And then as we go down, we'll talk a little bit about some of the lower ones. but feeling that action will take place is low, service quality focus and leadership. And so we're gonna take a look at some of those. I'll give you a second to absorb this.
How
And see,
is leadership different than management?
that is a great question, and I don't remember. Management.
I think we know.
This one was your immediate supervisor. This is like, here's how I feel about, it's kind of weird because I would say this is almost more management.
Yeah.
And this is more your immediate supervisor.
Yeah,
That is.
supervision versus management.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You override
So this one, you have a direct connection with somebody. The other one is the
bigger
amorphous them.
team, management team.
Yes.
And what is company confidence?
And where is that one?
It's
Right there.
right there.
I don't remember. I'm trying to remember if I didn't break down all of the questions. I did.
Well,
Yeah. But it's, yeah, I don't remember. It's some questions around, you like, I'm not even gonna make up what they are.
Okay.
So-
And one thing to keep in mind overall with these categories is that these are generally for surveys of for-profit institutions or companies.
right,
So there's a lot of company talk
yes.
Yeah.
and we're not a company.
Right.
So company confidence had questions like longevity, like how long do you think this company's gonna stay in business and you're gonna stay employed kinds of questions.
Okay.
But reworded for, what's your confidence in the long-term prospects of the district being able to do X, Y, and Z mission.
Okay, gotcha.
Would the
Sorry.
board at all fall under the leadership category?
That's a good question. I think that it's not very specific to, the questions weren't specific to that, but that could play into that. We have had very specific questions about that in past surveys. This one just didn't have those. And we'll see what I can't remember. I was so good. I prepared this for you a month ago and I've completely forgotten what's in here. So it's gonna be a surprise to all of us. Strengths and opportunities. So they broke down some of the areas where they really felt like, let's look at the high scores and the low scores so we can dig into this a little bit. And then I'm gonna talk about some other pieces. And so these are specific questions that came up. I know how my work contributes to the goals of Deschutes Public Library. 91% of the people feel strongly about that. Here's the immediate supervisor, encouraged me to offer my opinions. An immediate supervisor again cares about my well-being, which these are all great, especially you heard over and over again. It's a lot of times when you hear people leave a company or a workplace, it's not so much they didn't like the workplace, they didn't like their immediate supervisors. People from all backgrounds have equal opportunities to succeed at the library. That is one that actually we can measure from the previous survey that went up 23 points, which is awesome. Because we've been doing a lot of work around equity, diversity, and inclusion. So it's nice to see that part is paying off. I'd recommend this as a great place to work, went up 20 points, which is also, again, a great indication. I will point out that when we did the last survey a couple of years ago, the impact of COVID was still really strong with us. An immediate supervisor involves me in decisions. That's my work.
And do you typically have the level of involvement that you saw or participation that you saw this year in past years?
This is the highest.
Oh,
I think the last time we had about 80-something%. But not as high as this. So low scores. When it is clear that someone is not delivering in their role, Deschutes Public Library takes appropriate action, only got 15% favorable. And that's an interesting one for us to parse, because it's trying to figure out if is it because of the person staying next to you that you want that to happen to, or somewhere else. I'm satisfied with how decisions are made at Deschutes Public Library. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Management team at Deschutes Public Library acts consistently and do as they say, 36%. And then these are ones that you can again compare to before. This is the same one. It actually dropped 44%. So that is definitely one to look at. We hold ourselves and our team members accountable for results. And our physical workspace is enjoyable to work in. Of all of these, this one is not that big a surprise because we've been sticking people on temporary trailers and it's had an impact. Really good is they come in here and they look at, based on all of this, what are some areas where you can really make some positive change? And these are the ones that they suggested for us. I believe, here's the action one you're asking about. I believe action will take place as a result of this survey. And the next one, learning and development, I believe there are good career opportunities for me. And leadership, the management team at the Deschutes Public Library demonstrates that people are important to their organization's success. And equity, diversity, and inclusion, when I share my opinion, it is valued. But these are ones that they've identified that we should work on.
And when was the survey?
Late August. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should tell you what's happened since then. We got that in late August, shared it with the management team. I got the results at the end of September, shared it with the management team, and then all of our managers and supervisors. And then the October in-service day, we met as an organization and we all talked about this. We talked about what we're gonna do. And just so you know, I purposely did that way. I wanted to make sure it was the staff's information. I want to make sure that they heard it first from me and not through what we did at a board meeting. That's what you're getting at now. So they suggested here is, which I really loved, pick one area to work on. And the last time we got a survey, we picked about 5 areas to work on. And we made some improvements on them. We had some challenges in others. And this part I'm really excited about is we picked this one. The management team at Deschutes Public Library demonstrates that people are important to their organization's success. And the cool thing was basically unanimous. I met with all the managers. We looked at this and we said, we have to fix this piece. And then we met with all the rest of the leadership team across the district. We didn't tell them what we picked. And they unanimously picked this one as well. And this is one I kind of hinted at on Friday. This is one where I think we have just done such a great job of action, action, action. We've been building buildings. And I think that part has kind of hurt us. Since we're so busy in design meetings all day, our staff aren't seeing us. And we really have to make connections with people. That's why we started doing our in-service days. That's been a big help for us. But it's basically, for me, I think we have proven that we can get things done. I can confidently come to the board and say, we will get things done. And our next step is, but we need to do that in a way that honors all of our employees. And so we decided to take some immediate steps with that. I'm going to see what else is in here. So this is actually what we did. We kind of went through and asked all of our staff, like, what would that look like? Describe, what you're seeing, what would it look like if we're doing better, and how can we improve in this area? And I think that might be the last slide. Well, while that spans, it was. Okay. So that was really great timing for feedback. Again, we did this with the entire leadership team and came to them and said, what does this look like? What can we improve most? The number one thing came up with, Anne, because you mentioned on Friday, is that sense of staff's under stress. What do we do? Like, I feel like I can't take a day off because we're short-staffed. And great timing for us, because in reality, I've been talking with staff about it. We have this kind of culture of scarcity, and libraries have always traditionally had low budgets. We don't have enough staff to do things. And the actual reality is we're not in that situation. And we've talked about that here. That's how we've been planning out our budgets to start hiring. That was a big piece of our budget this year. And so that was one big thing that came up. There are a lot of other themes that came up as well. Another one is just having that connection with managers, and we're looking at what that means for us. It's like, how can we get out there and really show that we're working alongside people? And we decided to start off, because this is a big thing for us to accomplish, that we're going to take Redmond as a beta test for us and say, we can't fix the whole district today. But we have a great example coming in Redmond. And so this is all coming back to, why are we opening Redmond a month later? And some of the things we saw when we opened the smaller branches is that was a really high stress level for our staff. And something that we didn't quite grasp at the time, and that is, well, it's kind of the same building, it's just a few new things. Without the realization that for each staff person working there, even if they're a veteran staff person, there's a lot of stress, everything's different. And a really good example for us was Sun River, where we have really good staff that are ready to go, and with so many changes, they really felt like they needed more support. And so the lessons we learned from that, we said, we're not going to make the same mistake in Redmond. So one, we want to make sure that we have enough time for everybody. Two, we want to make sure we have enough staff. So the first thing we are doing is part of this closure piece is we had set our staff in the budget. We've decided to add 1.8 extra FTE for Redmond, and we've already had the opportunity to hire that. We were in the middle of hiring when we made this decision, and so we were able to get some extra people with that. So that's one piece. And the next piece is to really say, and we want them to be completely ready for this building. And this is, because this building is going to be a big change for Redmond.
Yes, it will be.
They're going from the old library plus a temporary space into a very large building with some very complicated things. Just to give you a sense, we quickly identified, here's some trainings that they're all going to need to know. HVAC controls, radiant heat system, lighting and controls, doors and ADA controls, automatic shades throughout the building, community room technology and functions, public PCs, staff PCs, all of our software that goes with this, automated materials handling system, and sorter, security cameras, EV chargers out in the parking lot, snow mitigation functions, makerspace equipment. That was a list we did a month ago. We've already expanded that. So a really cool piece is, what's that? And drive through. Yeah, there's much more. So we've been able to hire those people. I just met 5 of them yesterday. So that's pretty exciting. They just started, and we've got this entire training regime laid out for not just them, but also for our staff and other staff in the district who will be using this building. And so that's a big piece of what will happen over basically the next 2 months, is really making sure that they're really comfortable with that building so they can give the best service they can when they come in there. So that's a big piece that we're doing, but I expect to do that, broaden that out beyond, showing that yes, we can staff to those levels. But really taking this as an example of here's how we can do it effectively, and then modeling that for other libraries. Already I can tell you at each in-service day, I introduced the new staff that month. And over the past 6 months, I have done 0 to 1, and once we had 2 people. Tomorrow, I will be introducing about 12 to 14 people. Last month I introduced 1 person. So it's already happening, and that's kind of the exciting piece. It's something that we had planned in our budget that was there, but I don't think it's something that the staff had felt and seen yet. So it's going to be much more visible at this point. So it's some pretty exciting changes there. There's a lot more that we'll be doing in this area. And there's a lot of work we have to do. I will be quite frank with you, some of those results are not anything that I'm happy with. But I really feel like we have really strong engagement in there. And that is the number one thing, is just answering those questions. If people were really burnt out and not happy with us, they wouldn't even bother with the survey.
That's true.
And I would add on to that, just the wonderful discussions we had with all staff about these issues. And I think just that piece of them feeling like they're being heard, was really a big step. And the next step for us is to actually take action to go along with that. So this should be interesting for you, that I should be able to come at yearly with some of this information. So that you're actually seeing some real-time results. It's kind of hard when you do it every 2 years and we do some efforts and then you're not quite sure how it correlates with what happened. Any questions with any of this? Okay.
Related to what we were talking about the training that we're trying to provide to staff. One question that board members might get from members of the public is when those community rooms are going to be ready to open and be available for public to book. And that is a key element of the training and the comfort level for our staff. There's so many new features in these, especially in the big community room, but also in the makerspace rooms and in the study rooms. So we are going to have a kind of a phased approach where first staff will be doing programming out of these spaces, and then ultimately we will roll it out to the public. The public's gonna see it for a while and be like, I want to use that room, like I can see it right there, and that's why.
Some of the rooms will roll out sooner, like the study room.
Sure.
The meeting room, the community rooms.
Yeah, people are gonna be itching to get into these.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you ready for my library news?
Yes.
It's quick. It's 41 seconds.
I wanna see this.
And let's see if I can make it bigger.
As big as you're gonna get it.
Okay.
Made it small.
I made-
Wait. Go
There
back.
we go, awesome.
You keep clicking enough, it'll happen.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, here you
All right, here
go.
we go.
This is our construction. Film that, so
Wow.
That is gorgeous.
that's where he decided to dance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, look at all of it.
That's how we lost Levitt.
Yeah, really, it fell off the edge.
Don't tell me you was
Oh
Disney.
my gosh, that's cool.
The best thing you say about this is this doesn't even do it justice.
No, no,
Yeah.
the slightest.
Wow, look at the size of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in there yesterday, and just as you're moving around the building, anywhere on the second floor, you're seeing every different angle of it. And it's just amazing. And you can also see it from downstairs from certain angles as well. So just really excited about this. This is, now this is just going to be a special building for our public. I can't oversell it. And this is just an amazing piece to think that every single citizen has access to this. I mean,
Yeah.
Is there a display, with the information on the representation of this piece?
Not yet.
Not yet, but there will be, okay.
Yeah, we can do a QR code.
Oh, that's right.
And have information, we'll have a plaque for John and with the pieces, and then, we filmed the whole thing, like it's coming in, it's being built, it's being done, and then did an interview with John.
Nice.
Friday, the artist, and so we'll have links to that.
Very cool.
as well.
And he'll do a presentation too, right?
Yeah, he'll be here for the grand opening ceremony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sonia was telling me that, it's been cloudy this week, so we haven't really hit the full effect of it. But when the sun comes through the skylight and through the other windows, it projects onto other surfaces, so
Oh, wow.
it's really interesting. At first she thought there was something wrong. Wait, it's coming through the filters and all those things through there.
Wow.
Yeah, it does a lot of interesting things upstairs.
Oh, so exciting.
No, she did. At first she thought, oh, what happened? The surface is bubbling. She's like,
And you can sort of see it in the video, but when you're standing in the room, you're wondering like, is there a light in there? Is it glowing? And it's just picking up the ambient light through the skylight. It's really interesting.
Wow.
And it smells really good. It does
Yeah.
smell good. It's, you can smell the cedar, the wood, the,
Ooh.
you can smell it. It's the last.
I'm just getting more and more excited. I've had occasion to drive through Redmond several times in the last couple of weeks, and I keep driving people by the building. Have you seen this? We can go out of the way briefly and just drive by. Yeah, and everybody is just blown away by the building, the exterior, so.
Well, this is an opportunity also to give a huge amount of credit to our members of our staff who were there for the last month and a half, getting the collections onto the shelves.
Oh, yeah,
It was
no.
just an amazing effort that they put into that, so.
Yeah, it's really a large building that really shows off the collection well, and I think people in Redmond are just gonna go wild for it. I mean, it's,
Well, when I saw it, the general contractor was there and he was very nice to show us around, but he kept going on and on about how wonderful it was to work with the library staff. And he had never had anyone, any company that was so easy and so nice to work with. And he seemed very genuine too.
He's fun to work with.
yeah, and all I stopped by on a Saturday and all the construction workers were like, they were so proud of being part of that building, and they just couldn't wait to show it off, and, they were just so excited, and that makes you feel good.
I should add, other news is, this is gonna affect the date that we meet there. So I will get back to you with some adjusted dates for where our next meetings will be. Because I realized we switched room booking systems and I think we lost the East Bend room for our next meeting, so I will let you know where we're meeting next time. Yes.
Do we have foundation news?
Yes, let's see. Kind of like I reported last month, we're doing a little bit of housekeeping, reviewing policies. That's what we did last month. We are focusing on recruitment efforts to add folks to the board. So if you have anybody that might be interested, we would be interested in knowing those folks. And the capital campaign is moving along. End of report.
How about novel idea unveiled? When will that be?
This is seventh. I think it's seventh.
Is it Saturday or Friday?
It's Saturday.
It's the seventh.
Okay.
It's the seventh, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's always a biggie. Best party in town.
Yeah.
Okay, critical communication.
Oh, I do not have any from this meeting.
Okay, other than when the time comes, the timing on the Redmond
Yes,
closure.
I think we are
That's
getting that
right.
information out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, self-review of meeting. Betsy, do you want to start?
Sure, I would just like to recognize the management team, efforts with the employee engagement survey. I appreciate seeing that that's gonna happen on a yearly basis. I think, any data is helpful, especially, in understanding, what our employees want and need. And, there's always that putting yourself out there by doing those surveys, and that can be challenging, but it's a great opportunity to learn and grow, and I think it demonstrates clearly a concern for the well-being of the organization and the employees, so appreciate that.
Funny?
I'd like to say to both Greg and Robert about the fiscal responsibilities that we've gone through with this much money and this many buildings, and to be in the spot that we're at now is admirable. I think we should all be very proud that Greg hasn't been coming back with oops. So, yeah, and many thanks for the volunteers that, I'm sure there's gonna be needs for many more volunteers with our library, so it's kind of overwhelming. Good meeting.
Erin?
I think it's just incredible that we have 5 volunteers wanting to be in multiple branches, and that says a lot about the program and the support from Judy and her volunteer services team. Can't wait to see what the internship possibilities may look like with that. The fact that we wrapped up the work package 4 within $13,000, I think is just remarkable, and thank you to the previous board and to Greg for your leadership in working that all the way through so on target. It's just amazing. And I think it's just an amazing response to the employee engagement survey. 93% is just incredible. And I think that the consensus from leadership and from the employees on what to focus on says a lot about the general atmosphere and really the compassion for the employees that the library has.
Just want to thank Greg and Robert on the clarity that you bring to your reports. The numbers that, especially Robert, that you present are a little mind-boggling for me, but the clarity that you are able to explain the budget in our fiscal health is to be, I really appreciate that. And I want to say too, Todd, I appreciate the fact that you were able to share the engagement survey as a whole staff during your in-service. I think that was a real benefit for everybody to be together to hear that information.
Yeah, and I was sitting here thinking during the meeting, I can remember one meeting in Redmond a couple of years ago, and we had some big ticket items like the replacement of the roof on Sisters, and it's like a lot of money, and now we're going you know, but I do really appreciate the clear explanations we get, the good management we have had throughout, the good working relationships that we have fostered through from architect through contractor to financial management and oversight, which is, it's remarkable. Any one of these work packages would have been a big project, but to have 4 going simultaneously is huge. So to be able to say last month that we've been in these buildings for a year is incredible. To wrap up that package is incredible. And then to wrap up the design on downtown. And because we're so busy each meeting going through all the things that need to be gone through, I think we don't pause often enough to recognize how far we've come in this project through the help of our great staff, the people that have been working every Tuesday for years. You know, it's a huge accomplishment to get to this point, and I really appreciate working with each of you because the meetings are organized, people come, they're prepared, the questions are good. The discussion is good. I mean, the things that need to get asked, and it's just, it makes the process go so much more smoothly than it has in the past always, you know. So I appreciate that. I appreciate our volunteers because that shows the public's connection to what we do, and the employee engagement shows our connection with our employees and their connection to where they work. I mean, that's what makes us strong, are the people connections throughout, and showing people that we value them. is critical, because the people that work here, those are the people that are coming into the library interact with every day, and they are beloved by this community. And we need to make them feel appreciated, and we need to give them the best possible workplace we can, so. Yeah, I think it's been a great meeting. I just feel like we're really making some progress here. So.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I am very excited to say I was a little lost Tuesday because we had extra time. We weren't designing. We're not completely out of the woods yet, but that's a great sign. And I just want to highlight the board to be able to, it's one thing to be able to say our staff is stressed out because
Come on in.
Diana's just getting back from her outreach. Do you have it, Kate? It's cold.
I know.
Anyway, the support that you have given us, because when our staff's saying we're stressed to be short-staffed, already know that you've supported us in the budget to hire those positions, and we can be flexible. There are many libraries that they just have to say, I can't do anything. So that's great news for us, that we have that support, and I know that we'll be able to back up what we're saying with support within the staff. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody.